Thanks for tuning in to another TellyCast. Before this week's show, I wanted to remind you to sign up for our free weekly newsletter, TellyCast Plus. It features interesting TV industry news stories from a different angle and exclusive content, such as Opinion and The Secret Producer, our anonymous TV exec reporting from the front line of TV production. Plus, we're bumping up the goodies with more free downloads of TV industry reports, discounts, and exclusive access to some live TellyCast events we're planning for the months ahead. And you'll only get access to those if you're on our mailing list. And don't worry, we don't like spam either, so we won't do anything weird with your data like sell it to advertisers or anything. Just sign up at our website by searching TellyCast on Google or visiting telecast-podcast.com. Thanks a lot.
TellyCast, the TV industry news review.
How'd you get started in brand-funded programming as a producer? How does the process work at Channel 4? Does it start with the sales or the commissioning teams? And how do you deal with the politics and additional layers of complexity once you have brands and multiple agencies involved in production? On this week's show, I'm chatting with Sam Glynne, SVP of Branded Entertainment at Fremantle, Channel 4's Controller of Funded Content, Simon Wells, and Clare Thompson at K7 Media as we return to the brand-funded programming world. It's all coming up on this week's TellyCast. So way back in March, in episode 49, we did a feature on brand-funded programming, and I was really surprised to see that show has become our most popular show so far. So what do you do when you have a hit? Well, taking a leaf out of the content industry playbook, I thought we'd produce a sequel. And we have a key cast member back from the first show. Clare Thompson of K7 Media is back. And we're again using K7's latest report on brand-funded content as a basis for our discussion. And I'm also delighted to welcome two of the industry's leading protagonists in branded content onto the show to talk about the sector in a little bit more detail than we did last time. So welcome to TellyCast, Sam Glynne, SVP of Branded Entertainment at Fremantle and Controller of Funded Content at Channel 4, Simon Wells. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Justin.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great to have you all join us to talk about this really interesting and burgeoning sector. Now, first of all, Clare, can you take us through the basics of your latest report, which you can also download on the TellyCast website, and we'll have the link to that in the episode description. But take us through the basics of the latest report and what your findings were.
As you know, we did a big report right at the beginning of the year, a kind of overview of brand-funded content and the sort of state of the market at the moment. And then we decided that kind of in between updating that, we'd do some shorter kind of standalone looks at specific categories or themes in this area. And this one, it was actually suggested by our colleague Hannah Barnes, who's based in Australia. And she thought that the area of finance and spending, so whether it be around banks or small businesses, was really a kind of interesting one to look at in brand-funded content. A few reasons. I think what sort of sparked it is this sort of feeling that young audiences in particular are seeing finance, whether it be kind of, investment advice on Bitcoin on TikTok, or whether it be entrepreneurship as a kind of really fascinating area at the moment. And it was sort of, how are these sort of heritage brands getting into that market? Also, it was just very interesting to look at in the ways in which brands in that area are trying to make the content that's sort of sexy but also informative. It's one of the key challenges for all TV, but branded content in particular, and particularly for those sorts of brands that have reputations to uphold but are trying to attract those younger audiences. So there were lots of different examples from around the world that we looked at. So Australia, Russia, Italy, UK, Singapore, Finland, and all slightly different in each case. Some were pure sort of BFP, and others were more in the kind of sponsorship area. But it was just a particularly interesting category, we thought.
Do you think there's more opportunity in financial services funded content than other sectors at the moment, Claire? Is that something that you found? Or was it something more regionally that was more prevalent in Asia, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say that. I mean, I think the big categories are still the big categories in brand funded content that they've always been. So the easier ones, food, travel, home and lifestyle. And I think there are lots of constraints and challenges that come with this financial sector. Obviously, lots of regulatory issues, which, Simon will probably be able to talk about a bit more as well, which means that it's not easy to do. But I think what is interesting is the shift from those sorts of brands trying to sort of, if you like, borrow a bit of kind of sexiness by just attaching themselves as sponsors, say, of music programs or chart shows or talent shows, to actually trying to develop content that is relevant to their actual brand and the services that they're offering. I think that is changing slightly. And as you say, I mean, it is different in different territories what's possible to be done. And it's also difficult because some of the content that they're developing will be seen in more than one territory, whereas financial regulation can be quite specific to the territory in which you're operating. So there are lots of challenges, but I think, as with all sorts of categories, there's also this kind of driving need to show your brand purpose. And I think that's equally as important for banks and lots of these kind of sponsors of business shows as well.
We'll come back to talk about purpose in a little while. What is clear is that financial services are pretty boring, right? Sam, how do you make them sexy then? How do you create brand-funded content that is going to really engage consumers while making something that's going to sit really well on a channel like Channel 4?
How do I make a bank sexy? Wow, that's the question of the day. Look, there's lots of ways to, I'm saying there's lots of ways, there's probably a few ways to do it. One is to associate it with existing IP that has a bit of glamour and panache around it. So, for example, in Italy, X Factor is on Sky. It's a very upmarket, glamorous show. And it had Intesa Sanpaolo as a sponsor and brand partner for 4 years. And then it had the insurance company AXA as a partner. They seem like unlikely bedfellows, but it worked really well because X Factor was able to reach a very young, affluent audience, and the banks wanted to talk to those very same people. So we activated the partnership by sending contestants into the branches to sing. We also, in Intesa Sanpaolo, had these amazingly beautiful Italian-style headquarters in Milan, and we used that as one of our sets for the judges' reveals. And you never guess it, but they actually produced an X Factor credit card for Intesa Sanpaolo, which was a huge hit.
Right.
So this was a major part of Intesa's marketing campaign, and they reached this younger demographic and they turned their image around because suddenly they're about music, they're about spectacle, they're about mass entertainment, they were about changing lives. And I think that's a really important thing, thinking about branded content. What is the purpose of the show? So something like X Factor is about transformation. It's about being a nobody and becoming a somebody. And having that opportunity. I think banks offer that same sense of empowerment and reaching one's individual potential. So actually the marriage is not as peculiar as it seems. No. So one way, associate with glamorous IP. The second thing would be to create, like Simon has done at Channel 4 and Paul Tremaine at MediaCon has been amazing in doing, creating purpose-driven, entertaining, engaging stories which have the bank's brand values or the financial institution's values and purpose at the heart. It doesn't mean it has to be dry because it's all to do with the characters that are involved in the show, the hosts, the stories that are told. And these can be moving, witty, and basically galvanize audiences to think differently about banking institutions. However, my very, very favorite of all my bank branded content projects ever, and I don't know if you've seen it, is it's called Beyond Money. And it was funded by Santander. And it's a Spanish short film. I think it's about 17 minutes long. And it's a kind of Pedro Almodovar type sci-fi Black Mirror-esque short film about a woman who exchanges her experiences for money. So she'll go into this sci-fi type environment, plug a headset on, and she will sell her first kiss, or she'll sell her wedding day, and in return, she'll be given cash. And of course, she's left completely bereft and emotionally messed up. And the moral of the tale is actually, you should be thinking about experiences instead of just saving your money and getting rewards. One of Santander's programs was to give loyal customers experiences for banking with them. So that tied in beautifully. They did a fantastic activation. They had a red carpet premiere. There were posters in every single bank. They had the glamour of famous Spanish actors and directors. So suddenly it was a bank meeting showbiz in the most authentic way possible. And I urge you to look up this film. It's a really good, entertaining watch, despite the fact it's funded by a brand.
Right. Well, that sounds fantastic. We'll put a link in the episode description. Obviously, that needs a really far-sighted and ambitious and bold marketing director behind a brand to really get behind this. And as you say, it sounds like there's lots of point-of-sale activation right throughout. So they're really getting behind it. Simon, you have recently done 2 projects around financial services for Channel 4. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, sure. So the first one I think you're referencing is the Lloyd's Save Well, Spend Better series. Lloyd's had a campaign which was the M word, we need to talk about money, which was a great ad campaign. Sort of traditional 30-second ads, people talking about money, couples, children with their parents, because the British, in fact, most people, I think, around the world, money is one of those sort of taboo subjects for a lot of people. They don't talk about how much they earn or whether they're in debt or whatever. And Lloyd's created this traditional ad campaign, basically, with that insight, which was we need to talk about money, and being open about money is going to make less stress. Mediacom came to us and said, we'd like to bring this to life. I mean, the campaign is the campaign. There are TV ads, and it's very traditional. What could we do? And we were developing, in fact, in commissioning. One of the commissioning teams was developing an idea around exactly that subject matter. Funnily enough, coincidentally, about couples talking about their money issues and addressing them directly and kind of owning up to them in front of the camera and then being advised on how to resolve those. That was a perfect example of a happenstance where, by being connected with our commissioning teams in our side of the business here in Channel 4 Sales, we could kind of take a brief from an agency and see how that aligned with an idea that we were developing and effectively turn what was an advertising insight ad campaign idea and develop and extend that into a television program. And we made 4 episodes of that show. It was a really, really excellent show, actually. Worked incredibly well for the brand and for Channel 4. But as with all of these, in fact, funnily enough, we were in the depths of conversations about Series 2, and then COVID struck. So we were sort of at the turn of last year, we were beginning conversations about Series 2 for the summer of 2020, and then COVID struck. And that kind of conversation then, their strategy, as is often the way working with branded content, one party or the other, the broadcaster or the platform where you're working in a partnership, as we do with brands, takes a different direction. And Lloyd's then obviously kind of reconsidered all their marketing comms, and we need to talk about money wasn't the subject matter. The subject matter then became, how do we manage in a pandemic? How do we kind of reconfigure our finances and our businesses? Which then takes us to another brief from Mediacom, funnily enough, which was the brief for Dell, a company providing computers for businesses, for small businesses particularly, so young and small entrepreneurs. And they said, what would you do in the business and small business space? Business programs. There've been quite a few on TV. We know the Dragon's Dens of this world and shows like that. And we, at that time, were then looking, coincidentally, and being joined up with commissioning. And we raised this kind of opportunity discussion with Dell, with commissioning, and they said, well, we've got a great show we're looking at called The Profit, which is an NBC format from the States. And we're looking at a UK version of it. And luckily, we went, well, there's a fantastic opportunity here. Dell are looking to engage, to inspire young, small SMEs and help them through the difficulties of the pandemic and what they should be doing and how they should reconfigure their businesses. And that led to us working with Dell and Mediacom again, coincidentally, on The Profit, which became a show called The Moneymaker with Eric Collins, who is this incredible talent. He's a business investor from the States, and he fronted the show, and we reconfigured it ever so slightly from the American format to the UK format, and it ran in April of this year as again another 4-ep series, and did incredibly well. I mean, audience-wise, slightly disappointing, but new shows always are. But on the kind of basis of Dell's objectives, it performed incredibly well, generated a lot of content, a lot of additional content for them, and a lot of engagement from their SMEs because it was really well activated by the client and Mediacom.
Simon, I love what you guys have been doing in the past year and a half. It's been so trailblazing, and I use Channel 4 as an example to all our countries around the world and say, look what these guys are up to, what Simon's team are doing.
Thank you. It has been a tough old road, but in the last 3 years, particularly with, the new director of programs and our kind of people like Emma Hardy here, who's sort of manager, looks after all commissioning teams. The commissioning teams have really stepped up into this place to really understand that actually working with brands isn't such a bad thing. The old school ways were, oh my God, it's toxic. We can't. It's dirty. It's dirty commercial money. But I've always worked in the principle that in advertising, and advertisers want to make great stuff, and we can collaborate and we can partner. We can make great stuff, which isn't overly commercial, particularly in the entertainment space. So telling stories and giving viewers emotional experiences is what brands have always been good at. Good advertising does that. It engages on an emotional level. And this is what good programs do as well. So it's just about aligning those two sides.
Simon, have you found that you've said the commissioners have turned around their concept of branded content? How have you found production companies? Have they changed their views of it?
Most of them have. I think if you're a producer, you want to make stuff, you want to be creative, you want to produce. I'm a bit of a history nut, and I always look back and go, well, what happened in the past? How can we look at that now and think, is it the same or is it different? Now, obviously, technology's changed, platforms have changed, but fundamentally, people's enjoyment of storytelling or being entertained or being amused hasn't changed. And if you think about the great ads of the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s and 90s, and the talent that made those, like Ridley Scott and Alan Parker and Jonathan Glazer, all these great directors who came from the world of advertising, were making pieces of craft that entertained people in the commercial breaks. Producers now have the same opportunity. The money's coming from somewhere else, but the objectives are the same. Emotionally engage with an audience, tell them a story, make them feel something, take them on highs and lows, entertain, and make the brand the purveyor of that content, and make the connection between the two clever but not overt. Make it subtle and relevant, but don't cram it down people's throats. And I think that's not changed. I think it's just we're in a new world now with great technology, with long form content everywhere. And brands have a place to play in that.
Bravo.
For Channel 4, Simon, where does the journey start in branded content? Because this is something that I'm always fascinated about. I mean, you mentioned media agencies. You've got some of the biggest media agencies in the world coming to you with a couple of the ideas that you talked about a little while ago. But you've also got producers, leading producers like Sam, who come to you with ideas. First of all, what sort of percentage of ideas come from a media agency? Literally with, we've got something for, we need to get our water brand to emotionally engage with its target audience. Do they come to you with a brief as open as that, and you say, okay, we're going to come back to you with a concept? or is it more often that Sam, for example, will come to you with a worked up idea with a brand already attached? And now it's a case of, we like the idea. Now let's talk about slots. How does this work? Because there are many different people involved, and this can come from very different directions, and it could cause issues, I guess, on the negative side. Some of those could cause more issues than others. So where does the journey start for Channel 4 in branded content?
It starts in all of those places, and each one is different. Like any creativity kind of can come from anywhere. I always say a great idea can come from anywhere. It just has to be spotted, nurtured, developed, and executed brilliantly. But for us, we get approached by clients and agencies coming to us and saying, we've seen what you've been doing on AFP, and we really like to do something. We've got a brief, exactly as you said, for a water bottle. We want to make it stand for something in viewers and consumers' minds, and we think the best way to do that is to create content and create entertainment, and then activate the hell out of it. So if that happens, we will take that brief internally into Channel 4, and in our new processes, which have been running for about three or so years, as I say, we would then share it across all the commissioning departments and scheduling in a weekly routine, and go, to all those representatives from commissioning and from scheduling, is there something that would an idea that you've been looking at, you've had pitched to you in the last 6 months or so that might answer this particular brief? And if there is, brilliant, and that's happened on the two examples that I talked to you earlier. That's how those came about. But also, producers are talking to agencies and brands directly as well now, and they can be developing ideas for brands. All I'd say as a channel, working at a channel, is don't develop it too much if you've got Channel 4 in mind, because if you come to us and say this is what water brand X wants to do, it's possible they get too emotionally wedded to it, the brand does, then it's going to be a hard sell for us to change it, because we basically, in this world, we've got to find ideas that work for everybody, for the platform, for the audience, and the platform knows its audience, and for the brand. So, but they, companies like Sam's and people like Sam are doing a brilliant job of developing, having those conversations with clients and agencies early on, developing top line ideas, and then pitching them into, and broadcasters, SVODs, broadcasters around the world. This is becoming a bigger business by the month, I think. And, more broadcasters are getting on board. ITV are getting more engaged. Channel 5 have always been engaged. The SVODs are quietly doing this sort of stuff. As long as it's good entertainment, that's the most important thing. And that the brand can then be a part of that, a relevant part of that. That is it. I think we're an audience first business in branded entertainment. You have to think of what does the audience enjoy, and then work out the brand. Whereas in advertising, it's a brand first idea, and then who cares what the audience really think? We just don't tell them something,
Absolutely.
And I also think, well, I was going to say, Simon, I think in all the discussion about Channel 4's kind of public service remit, the fact that you are you're essentially offering a service to a lot of these producers in terms of the kind of air traffic control, management of some of this side of it, the engaging with brands and helping to get their content funded, which is sort of beneficial to all the sides of the party, but comes at quite a cost and resource to Channel 4. Obviously that it's helping the programs get paid for, but it's a model that's also serving the independent production community at the same time as they learn to sort of negotiate these new models.
Indeed, yeah. And again, this comes from an ad man who I admired massively, and it was his philosophy about creative advertising business, is that there was a chap called David Abbott, who had an ad agency called Abbott Mead Vickers, and the older audience members listening to this will know of Abbott Mead. But David Abbott had a saying about creative advertising, creative ad spots, which is look after the work and the business will look after itself. That applies to this. If we concentrate on making great branded entertainment shows, then other clients see it and go, that's what I want. What you did for Lloyd's, I want that. I want the same thing for my brand. So after we did Lloyd's, we had quite a number of banks going, we want something like that. Can we have it? We might go, well, with Channel 4, we've already got Lloyd's. We can't work for everyone. But, do it. The more we do it, the more we will do in this territory.
Absolutely.
So we've got to concentrate on the quality of good quality entertainment, branded entertainment.
Hear, hear.
Sam, from the perspective of a producer, obviously you're heading up branded content at Fremantle. Give us an idea, how many branded projects do you work on a year, for example? And also, has that increased during COVID?
So my remit is branded entertainment across the world. So that will include sponsorship, product integrations, brand storytelling within existing IP. So it might be a sponsorship of Americans Got Talent, or it might be an integrated storyline in one of our soap operas around the world. So it's all encompassing. So we do 200 or 300 of those deals a year across our 30 territories. So that's quite meaningful.
Yeah.
However, brand funded programming, which I'll class as an original piece of content that's been funded by a brand, trickles through much more slowly. And those projects are still few and far between. I think there's many challenges, and one of them is the amount of stakeholders involved. So we have the broadcaster, we have the commissioning team there, we have the commercial team, we have the brand, we have the agency, we have the production company, and getting all those stars to align and getting the timing to work with the brand's marketing campaign, getting the budget to work with the broadcaster and the brand, getting the brand to be happy with compliance and how much visual and verbal mentions they can actually have in the show. It's a long and complicated process. And I'm incredibly grateful to the broadcast teams like at Channel 4 who really help us through that and help give the brand a return on investment when they build the multi-platform extensions around the show. But it's a lot of heavy lifting. And Simon's right, producers are a lot more open to doing brand funded content because they see that it's a way to get shows off the ground that might not make it to air otherwise. But they have to be resourced enough within the production companies to manage that process, because it's hard work and there's lots and lots of people involved, and it's you're going to reach a number of dead ends.
Yeah. So Sam, let's say I'm a producer. I've just left a network to set up my own production company, but I've never really been involved in brand-funded content. And presumably, if you're setting up a brand new production company, brand-funded content has got to be a key part of your mix, surely, going forward from a strategic perspective. So where do I start? How do I start getting involved with brands? Is it just a case of picking up the phone or sending an email to GlaxoSmithKline and trying to find out who the brand manager is?
I think you make as many friends as possible across the advertising industry. You never know where that money is going to come from. It might come from the media agency. It might come from the creative agency. Increasingly, it's coming from the PR agency. It might come from the brand itself. The worst thing that can happen is, so often I get producers come to me and they say, we've created this show. It's perfect for brand X. It's got all their brand values. And I'll go, that's great, you're absolutely right. But unless brand X has decided that for 2021, they're going to spend some money on content, they're not going to care. So it has to be getting all the stars to align and making sure that, the people you're talking to actually have budget. So the way I like to work is, well, two ways. One is you can have an existing idea or a format that's kind of half-baked. A brand will come to you, and as Fremantle, we had a huge database of creative ideas from around the world, and they'll say, we want to be about purpose, we want to be about the environment, we want to be fun, and I can literally type those words into our database and come up with some pre-existing paper formats or existing shows. And then we can work with the brand and tweak it so it really comes to life for that brand. Another way to do it, as Simon mentioned, is to start from scratch. And the brand will come to us with a brief and say, I want to tell a story on television with content. Often talent will be key to this. And they'll say, we know you work with Kevin MacLeod or you work with Simon Cowell. We want that person as part of our story. And then we'll shape a piece of content around their brand values, their marketing needs. So it's very, very precisely what they want. Once we start working on this, we'll have a very soft conversation with Channel 4, perhaps with the commissioners, with the scheduling team. This is an idea we're looking at. What do you reckon? Get some feedback. And then by the time we get a little bit further down the line, we know that Channel 4 are wanting that show, because if the broadcaster are not wanting to commission that show, there's no point in anyone going to all that effort. When we get to a certain point when the initial idea has been signed off, then I'll say to the brand, you now need to invest a little bit in development. It's about putting some skin in the game and knowing you really are emotionally and financially committed to this project. We'll work up an idea together, and then it'll go to the commissioner. And at that point, we send a big red flag to our brands and agencies to say, it's no longer in your control. This is now a TV production. We're serving our audiences. We're giving them what they want. The final sign-off will be by the broadcaster commissioner. So we're all going to have to trust each other now and get on with the job. And I think if you've done the right prep work and you've got to a place where there is an element of trust and understanding and absolute clarity and transparency about the roles and responsibilities of all the stakeholders in the process, then it will go as smoothly as possible, with caveats.
That's really interesting because, for example, an over-enthusiastic brand manager with a freshly minted MBA will feel quite uncomfortable at that point, right? I mean, they are, as you say, the fact of, it's no longer within their control. Advertising, you know what you're getting, and that's it. And then it goes on screen. As you say, when it becomes a TV production, it becomes this sort of nebulous thing that they can no longer fully control. I mean,
but that's the beauty of it. It becomes entertainment. It's not an ad anymore.
Yeah.
It's something that people are going to seek out independently to watch and enjoy. There's the magic.
I completely agree with all of that. I mean, Sam's absolutely nailed the whole process from beginning to end. Completely agree with. Yeah, and what you say is true, Justin. You get a client who's used to managing every single frame of their piece of branded content, which is very different to branded entertainment or brand funded programming, and they can go, tut there, I don't like that, I don't like the voiceover. And I've done a lot of these in the past as a producer, and you kind of go along with that. But when they're doing a program with us, it's very difficult for some of them, because they have to let go, and you go, no, you don't, let us. We are the experts. We make hundreds of hours of programming every month. We know, and the producer knows what they're doing. So you have to let go and let us. And it can become very tense and very difficult.
But there's the value of a really good agency who can manage that process, who understand branded entertainment, and they know how to manage their client.
But what's also interesting is, obviously in different brand categories, it's even more pronounced. So, I mean, lots of people that we talked to, did identify that in the kind of banking and finance area, not only is everyone incredibly kind of paranoid about the reputation of their brand, but they're also, their kind of processes and models for doing things are very different to the way things are done in television. They might be much slower. They might be, much more documented at every stage. And so, there's lots of kind of conflicts to be resolved there in terms of different ways that people work.
In my mind, I just had the idea of one of those very long American boulevards in LA where there's so many traffic lights and you're inching along from one end to the other. Whereas, in normal commissioning and normal production, the commissioner likes it or not, and then it gets made.
Yeah, but the journey's half of the joy, isn't
it? Yes, yeah. Well, actually, let's talk about the politics of it. Now, I'm going out on a limb here, and I'm guessing there are more politics involved in brand-funded programming than a normal TV show, due to advertising agencies, media agencies, PR agencies, channel heads, commissioners, schedulers, producers. There's a lot of people with skin in the game here, and presumably a lot of creative people, a lot of very commercially minded people. Is it the agency who's the key to driving this through and keeping the train on the track, Sam, would you say?
Not always, but agencies are really valuable and they bring different skill set. What I love about working with agencies is their insight into audiences, their insight into the brand and purposes, and their strategic understanding of cultural movements, which we as TV producers don't have. We just go, oh, that one was really good for career, we'll have one of those. But they have all this data and insight, which I find fascinating when shaping a program for an audience. So I'm delighted to work with them. I think it makes the whole process more interesting and profound in its own way.
Coming back to Simon, earlier on, you mentioned commissioners in the process, which sort of surprised me somewhat, because I didn't think a regular Channel 4 commissioner was responsible and involved in a brand-funded programming piece of content. Am I wrong? Is it just a case of once the program comes alive and it's a project, is it then allocated to a commissioner? How does that work?
Oh gosh, yes. Our commissioners are now very much, they commission a normal, the traditionally commissioned Channel 4 program alongside an AFP or branded funded program. They get it completely. They some of them are extremely adept and good at it and managing the creative process. I used to make TV commercials when I first started in this industry, and the commercials director, so there were some incredible talents in commercials directors in the late 80s and 90s. A good commissioning editor is a bit like a really good TV commercials director. They're great at sort of helping interpret the client's wants and needs and turning them into something entertaining and fun and away from the sort of like the rather dull, predictable, this is the product. They're really good at kind of just pivoting it and making it a creative idea. And we've got a number now who are really relish working on brand funded programs at Channel 4, but they're always brought into the process right at the beginning. They work with my team and see a commission through from beginning to end. And so, for example, if one of Sam's development teams comes in to Channel 4, pitches his commissioning editor and says, well, there's got brand funding, the commissioner will go, brilliant, excellent, right, I'm looking forward to working on that, and will work with us. Then we'll be dialed in because we have to help navigate the Channel 4 processes, Ofcom, legal. And funnily enough, in many ways, the legal and Ofcom sort of, so contracting rights and compliance are the more tricky things nowadays.
Yes,
we have to see our way through, navigate all of those. But commissioning, no. I mean, I see future commissioners being able to turn their hands to brand-funded programming, traditional commissions, to all kinds of different models. It is effectively just a co-pro, but we are giving the brand a different set of rights and input to a co-production partner. It's effectively a co-pro. Does
Channel 4's nations and regions and diversity quotas, do they still apply to branded content?
Yes. They are commissions as just like any others, and we report them to Ofcom as part of our sort of, commitments to nations and regions. So yes, Lloyd's Save Well Spend Better was produced in Scotland, Glasgow, by Firecracker. A number of our shows have, food shows been produced in Bristol, Leeds. So yes, they absolutely all qualify as Channel 4 commissions.
Channel 4's digital strategy has obviously been, a really big change for the network over the past couple of years. Has that changed the nature of brand-funded programming? I mean, are you doing much short-form brand-funded programming as well as long-form?
Yes. So we were doing short-form content on all four. When I first started, that was the start of our strategy of doing what we call four shorts, if you remember that, in about 2014. But recently, we've had a chap called Matt Ford join from Lad Bible, who set up our commercial social channel. So 4 Studio is basically our social offering. So we're basically now turning on our social. We've got 4 social channels, which on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and now on TikTok. And we are commercializing those and creating branded entertainment on those platforms. And that's part of our growth strategy, because we can effectively monetize those channels, but produce great content, social content on those channels. And that's short form generally. It is, what I deal with is long form, what I'd call full length branded entertainment. So half hours, 1 hours. The social team have been going for about 12 months now. That is a very busy part of our business. And a lot of producers are producing content for us on those platforms as well.
One last question about producers. I'm a brand director at the water brand I mentioned earlier on, and I come to you and said, I want to appeal to our audience. And you come up with the idea, the one that you've had in the desk, and it looks fantastic, works really well for them. How do you choose the producer for that? Obviously, you've got to fit in with the quotas as well that you mentioned, but is it a case of the commissioner says, right, I know exactly the right producer for this because of something that they've done in the past, or do you have producers pitching for projects? How does that work?
The brief comes in, we look at it, we discuss it in a commissioning and scheduling routine every week. It's discussed. If somebody says, I've got something and it's from X production company, I've been looking at it, or I saw it 2 months ago and we quite liked it, but we weren't at the time, we didn't have the budgets for it, but that could be the perfect answer. So there is already a producer with an idea. And that's happened on those two examples. I quoted you on Dell and the Moneymaker and Lloyd's. Those were sort of had come in with production companies who had pitched them to us for traditional commissions. But if there is nothing in the locker, so to speak, we would assign it to a commissioning editor in a particular genre. So we'd think, well, we'd discuss it and say, this is actually factual. It's going to be a specialist factual. Let's give it to one of the specialist factual commissioners, somebody like Jonah Weston. He would then take it on and would go work with one of the team here in the GCMs, one of my team, to develop that brief and then would leave it to him to decide which was the best group of producers to ask to pitch for it. And so we do that regularly as well. So we will write, the commissioner will select the production companies and then ask them to give them the brief, and they will pitch back. And I mean, we've done many shows that way and very effectively. It's one of the processes we go through is the briefing and pitch. But as I say, the third way is when Sam comes to us and said, we've been working with the Story Lab and we've got this idea that their client loves and would like to develop it with you some more and further. So we will then take it into commissioning, and the commissioner will then work with Sam's team to refine that idea so that it is ready for us to pitch to Ian Katz and get a green light for.
Claire, when it comes to the report, you focus on brands demonstrating their purpose in this new report. Can you expand on that a little bit, in terms of what that really means and how it's manifesting itself?
Yeah, I mean, what we found, it is the sort of the kind of commitment that brands are very keen to be seen to be making at the moment to some kind of broader purpose, but it takes different forms. So there are obviously, in the example of the report that we've just done, there are, for example, banking brands who are wanting to demonstrate their purpose to individuals, the purpose of their products. So with the example of Lloyds Bank that Simon's already talked about, Save Well, Spend Better, it's helping people not only with their banking and their finances, but also their mental health. Then there are the examples where companies are showing their commitment to sort of wider organizations. So, for example, small businesses, as in the Moneymaker example. But then I guess the kind of biggest area is where brands are now trying to demonstrate their kind of wider purpose to society in general. And, it can take so many different forms, whether it's about diversity or sustainability. There was an interesting example that we talk about in the report. A bank, DBS Bank in Singapore, started doing a series of shorts. They kind of created this series called Sparks, it was kind of essentially a soap following employees in the bank, but they were all tasked with helping social enterprises. So you got a kind of bit of behind the scenes of the people working for DBS, but you also got individual little storylines, and these pieces of content were 5 to 10 minutes long about particular social enterprises or kind of causes that they were supporting. So there was, for example, getting kind of lighting for a cricket ground in India, and so it was quite an interesting way of personalizing the sort of mission of the bank, but also telling these little individual stories of different things that were organizations that were helping society in some way. So that is what a lot of brands are now looking for. It's, how do we demonstrate to people that we're about more than just our basic service, that we stand for something.
Are you seeing that, Sam? I mean, in terms of the projects that you're delivering, are you seeing brands changing their behavior and wanting to communicate their purpose more clearly or differently, or actually coming to you in order to communicate their purpose?
Very much the latter. I think content is a really good way to tell the story of a purpose. It's very difficult to do it in a 30-second spot or in a print ad, but when you can really bring that purpose to life and give it meaning, a documentary or a factual entertainment show does that beautifully.
Do you think the pandemic has changed that? We have seen a number of different brands just change their communication strategy, I think, as a way of pivoting or just essentially changing their focus. Have you been inundated with a whole load of new projects since COVID hit?
I'd say not inundated with new projects, but I'd say that every project we do get in as a brief does have a purpose around it. I think that, as I say, they value the role of content, but you're seeing things like, was it Corona who did the Being Human series, which is fantastic. It's a Spanish and Brazilian language. It's a set of short films, but it was all about people expressing their freedom, going back to the environment, leaving the city, becoming a diver or an eco-warrior, but had the beer brand behind it. So you're getting unexpected brands who are finding that way of expressing sustainability or diversity, and they're using content to do that. And I think that's a really exciting partnership between brands and content makers.
To wrap up our brand-funded programming special, instead of stories of the week and get in the bin, this week I wanted to ask you all, which is your favourite piece of branded programming or brand-funded programming? First of all, those that are not produced or aired by yourselves. Simon, what's the favourite piece of programming that you've seen that's been produced and aired elsewhere?
I'm going to talk about two ITV shows, actually, because the first one is one that hasn't aired yet, but I'm so excited about because it shows that ITV are now getting in on the act on this. Because I think Channel 4 has been doing a lot of this, and a lot of clients were coming to us and going, I want to do something. I go, no, go and talk to ITV, go and talk to Channel 5. We need others to be doing this because this is a thing, and if we just do it all, it's. So ITV have are now doing a M&S show called Cooking with the Stars. I've just been seeing the lineup for some of the talent for that. Some great talent. I mean, some really big names. So you're thinking, gosh, this is a big thing. I think it's being made by South Shore, isn't it? And I'm really impressed by that because it's a big show. And the other ITV show I'd say was what Sam did with Supermarket Sweep, actually.
Thank you, Simon.
Again, just a game show, because I think game shows do have more of an opportunity with brands. We haven't done any at Channel 4. We've done a lot of factual, specialist factual, and some entertainment shows, but not game shows yet.
Well, it's interesting in the States because Pepsi recently did the game show. I can't think of its name. Claire, you'll know.
Cherry's Wild.
That's right. And that was a brand funded game show. We've got the catalogue for Family Feud, Price is Right, Let's Make a Deal, Card Sharks. And we work with brands as partners, but I would love a brand to come along and, really supersize like Tesco did with Supermarket Sweep, because they're such a fantastic vehicle for audiences and they're so popular and they're long running, they're cost effective, they're great.
And I thought just tying in the kind of purpose thing with the game shows thing, the fact that College Bowl, which is a bit like University Challenge, is coming back to NBC with Capital One, the bank behind it, but they're giving away funded scholarships for the winners as part of that. So again, it's kind of, it's a fun, sexy game show with a brand behind it, but with a little bit of purpose in there as well.
Simon, how about the piece of content that you've produced during your time in Channel 4, because you're going to be moving on, aren't you, as well? That's a bit of an exclusive that we have. You're going to be moving on from your role fairly soon.
I am, yes. I'm going to be leaving in a month or so's time. I want to get closer, really much closer to the production and creative development process with clients on this. I really enjoy that. And it's been great at Channel 4, but I'm a bit removed from it. And I want to get really close in on particular projects. the thing I most enjoy, I'm most proud of at Channel 4 was probably, lots of them. They are, pretty much everything we've done, we've been really proud of in different ways, because each one is, a labor of love at times.
Of course.
But I think All Star Driving School was a turning point. It was about 3.5 years ago. We did that. We got a brief from the agency, the Seven Stars, a really great agency, actually, a small independent agency. Suzuki was their client. Suzuki had been working with ITV on the Ant Deck ideas and went, we really get what content, what brand entertainment is, because we were working on Ant Deck. We don't want to meddle. We want you, Channel 4, to go and come up with an idea for us that would work as a great entertainment show. We want to appeal to a younger audience that we've been appealing to. So we issued a brief. The commissioning editor here, Johnny Rothery and Dominic Bird at the time, 5 indies, and an idea came back that just sort of went, wow, it ticks all the boxes. We know it'll work. They'll love it. And that was All Star Driving School. Now, the great thing about All Star Driving School is not only did we do 2 series of it, and then Suzuki's now become a really loyal client to Channel 4 because we kind of innovate and we're prepared to push boundaries. But that series is now running in, I think that format is running in about 6 different territories around the world.
I love that.
With different car manufacturers funding it in different markets. And, there's a Mexican version, there's a Polish version, there's a, Claire will probably know more than me, but it's running a lot of markets. So it's and it was a turning point for us.
And that is the real holy grail. Yeah, ones that can travel.
Yeah, agreed. Scalable.
What about you, Sam? What about your favorite piece of brand funded programming that you haven't produced, and then one that you have?
So, being very topical, we weren't on the Croisette last week, dunking rosé and behaving atrociously, but we did get to watch the winners for Cannes Lions Entertainment Awards. There were 2 Grand Prix winners this year, and I'd seen one of them before and have loved it the moment I saw it. It's called Swipe Night, and it's from Tinder. And it's basically choose your own adventure for Tinder subscribers. So I think it was a Sunday evening, and you could log on and you were given a drama where you could choose your own outcomes for every scene and create your own story. And that actually aligned you to potential dates because they too had made the same choices, or they too liked the choices you'd made. So they'd use storytelling and entertainment to make an app into an entertainment platform, which I think is the way forward for all of these tech apps. And they'd also brought people together during lockdown to share a story and find common ground in a way. When you couldn't go out on a date, you had a new way to communicate. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And all you had to do was swipe to go on to the next scene, which was completely intuitive to the way that people use Tinder.
Yeah, very good. Very clever. And how about the piece of programming that you've produced yourself that you're most proud of?
There's lots that I'm proud of, but I'm going to choose something that isn't a piece of programming, controversially. NFTs. We recently produced a series of NFTs, non-fungible tokens for American Gods. And they were pieces of content in their own right. We created collectible cards of the main characters from the show, and we published them as NFTs via Curio and got a very excited fan base who were buying these products and trading them. And, it's not about the financial gain in this case. It's about building the fan audience and the community and watching this interactivity of a piece of IP spinning off into a completely different universe. The whole NFT world is obviously very nascent, and I'm fascinated to see how it will develop and how the intrinsic symbiosis between brands and content via NFTs is fascinating.
Yeah.
So watch this space.
Maybe we could actually, sell this episode as a NFT. Maybe that could.
How much
maybe
do you
that
think
could
we
work.
get for it?
Oh, well, there we go. We'll see. We'll see if it's as popular as our last show on the topic. How about you, Claire? What's your favourite piece of brand funded programming that you've seen in your travels?
Oh, well, I was going to come up with a whole list of why this one was clever and that one was, but actually, if I'm perfectly honest, the thing that I enjoyed most during lockdown was the Erdinger Jurgen Klopp documentary, partly because we're a household of Liverpool fans, but just for the moment when they're asking who is the man who's going to come and save the club and lead it to a new dawn, and Jürgen just walks in and says hello, and it was just it was just a lovely, well-made, perfectly timed piece of content that could have been brand funded or not brand funded, and was great. So yeah, I'll stick with that one.
We'll put links to as many of those as we can find on the episode description. Simon, best of luck with your next role. So that is essentially you're going to be a consultant. Is that right? Your next role?
Well, quite possibly, yes. Yeah, quite possibly, yes. I mean, I'm really keen to get back into the kind of the development and creation of these, because I love working with advertisers closely and making great content with advertisers, and it just so happens that my heart really lies in the entertainment content. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Okay. Well, wish you all the very best for the future, and congratulations on what you've done at Channel 4. Any sign of your replacement yet? Do we know any names in the hat?
I know nothing. I know nothing at all.
Right. Okay. I had to try that, Simon. You have to forgive me for trying that.
They're going to be very busy.
All the best. Sam, thank you again for coming on. It's been fantastic to have your expertise and knowledge. And we could talk about all your brands. We could spend a lot of time speaking about even just one of them, I'm sure. But it's been brilliant to have you on TellyCast. And Claire, thank you again. Your report, Brand Funded Programming in Spending and Financing, is available to download on the TellyCast website, which is at telecast-podcast.com in the download section. So thanks to all three of you for coming on the show. It's been really enjoyable chatting to you.
Thank you. Good luck, Simon. We'll miss you so
It's
much.
been a real pleasure, actually. Thank you very much.
Justin.
Really enjoyed it.
Well, that's about it for another week's TellyCast. As always, thanks a lot for listening. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the show and share it with friends and colleagues. And don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter, TellyCast Plus. It's packed with interesting TV industry stories of the week you may have missed, downloadable reports and surveys, and exclusive insight and opinion. It's all completely free. Just visit our website to sign up at telecast-podcast.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. TellyCast was edited by Ian Chambers and recorded in London. Until next week, as always, stay safe. Thanks for listening to another TellyCast. A quick reminder to sign up for our free weekly newsletter, TellyCast Plus. It features interesting TV news stories from a different angle and exclusive content, such as Opinion and The Secret Producer, our anonymous TV exec reporting from the front line of TV production. Plus, we're bumping up the goodies with more free downloads of TV industry reports, discounts, and exclusive access to some live TellyCast events we're planning for the months ahead. And you'll only get access to those if you're on our mailing list. And don't worry, we don't like spam either, so we won't do anything weird with your data like sell it on to advertisers or anything. Just sign up at our website by searching TellyCast on Google or visiting telecast-podcast.com. Thanks a lot.